So welcome everyone to the AICCM and SCAM Conservation Business Basics webinar. I'm Lisa, the AICCM SIG coordinator, and I'm co-hosting tonight with Belle Williams here, who's the president of SCAM. And tonight we're broadcasting from the Kulin Nation. So I'd like to pay my respects to the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, their elders past, present and emerging, and all First Nations peoples. Sovereignty has never been ceded, always has and always will be Aboriginal land. Something we feel very passionately about, and we've been doing a lot of great talks recently. You'll see one with Vicky Cousins that we did as well recently on Indigenous artworks and conservation, so please take a look at that as well. So I'd like to introduce our wonderful speakers tonight. These are three exceedingly inspiring women, I have to say, and I'm thrilled that they've come to do this webinar with us. On the left there, we have Robyn and Vallier, who started their own conservation practice Care of Studios in 2019. Many of us have talked about starting a practice, but as yet not many of us have succeeded in doing the hard yards and getting it done. So I'm really looking forward to hearing their tale from starting a new practice within a 6-month period. Their business provides artist value and people-centred conservation of modern and contemporary art in a sustainable, inclusive and collaborative way, which is what we all want to be. And on the right here, I have Gianna, who's a lady after my own heart. She's into visual arts and great bands, and her dedication to the arts has even seen her travel overseas for music gigs, which I was very impressed to learn. Knowing Gianna, it's no surprise really that she specialises in the tax and accounting needs of the arts community, especially artists and musicians, but all kinds of the cultural community. And I think many conservators will find this very valuable session to be able to ask her all your burning questions about accounting. So please put your questions to Gianna in the Q&A. You'll see the little button down the bottom there, and we'll be asking them during her session. And then at the end, we'll be asking all our panelists questions. We'll be reading them out. Belle and I'll be reading them out. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome first Robyn and Elle to talk about their studio practice and starting a business.
Thanks, Lisa. Cool. Just need to share our screen. Can you guys see that okay? Yeah, great. So to begin, we would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we live and work, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We recognise the continuing connection to country, land, water, language and community, and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. So yeah, getting into setting up your own conservation practice, like Lisa said, is exciting and something that I think a lot of people seems like a natural step after you finish study, but it can also be a bit of a daunting experience. So when we started last year, we had really no idea what lay ahead of us. We were just like, okay, this is the time we're going to bite the bullet. But luckily we found many resources out there that really helped us on our way, which are there for you as well. And many of the pitfalls that, starting a new business, especially a creative business, can be avoided if you sort of seek out the right advice and get careful planning from the get-go. So first off, we'd like to highlight this disclaimer that we are by no means experts. We're just going to briefly outline what came to us and what our experience over the last 18 months or so in starting our own business has been. We are aiming to provide some general guidance only and highly recommend seeking professional advice if you do want to start your own business. So before you do, I guess, undertake a business venture, you sort of need to determine these key points. So, who do you already know that you could call on for business advice? Maybe family, friends, I don't know, people that you've come into contact with in past careers, etc. What do you want your business to look like in 5 and 10 years? Are you going to operate it by yourself or with others, with other people within your business or in similar businesses that you can use for support? Do you know what your legal, tax and professional obligations are? What are the potential risks? And have you planned out your business and what strategies you'll use to get there?
So first off, just about finding support. So there are many professionals and organisations that you can go to get business advice. So that includes an accountant, a lawyer, insurance broker, business mentors, and conservation mentors. So you can, in terms of conservation mentors, you can join the AICCM mentoring program and seek out more kind of experienced conservators. But also don't look past your own colleagues that you're studying with and that you work with in your internships and in your jobs. So here in Co-Studios, we have a shared studio space where we have a few different conservation businesses that focus on different specializations. So we have a paper conservator, we have an objects conservator, we have another paintings conservator. So we work collaboratively on projects, on particularly big projects, and we ask each other about treatment advice and business advice. So lean on the networks that you have because you have skills and, it's good to kind of share those skills and to be a sounding board to your friends and research. So also there's a lot of like government bodies. So they provide business advice and workshops. And also you have universities and TAFE providers that provide kind of entrepreneurial and business short courses. And don't look past your own previous experience from other fields that you can use in your business and experience that you've had working for other people and other conservators. So for example, like I have a background before conservation in architecture and design. So I have experience working with budgets and contracts and project management and graphic design. And Elle has had previous experience in galleries, so she's used to liaising with clients and artists and doing that kind of people-facing role. So, acknowledge your own natural skills and your inclinations and your experience and use them to your advantage in your business.
So getting a bit into business vision, and this is sort of back to thinking about, if you're starting a business, where do you want it to go in 5 and 10 years? So, it's important that you have a clear idea of why you want to start a business and how your business concept can solve a problem. Maybe you want to service a specific community or focus on a niche material. Maybe you just want to get some experience and earn some money while applying for institutional jobs or internships. There's so many different roles this can take. And so, this information is, I guess, our journey, as we've said, which is establishing a conservation practice, but I'm hoping there'll be little bits and pieces if you're looking for a slightly different track. So a vision statement that states the current and future objectives of your organisation. The vision statement is intended to be a guide to help your business make decisions that align with your philosophy and declared set of goals. So it should be a concise statement that helps you articulate your aims 5 to 10 years into the future. And you can see ours on this slide here. So there are a range of entrepreneurial startup workshops, as Robyn mentioned, provided by universities and education providers that can, just act as a bit of a kickstart to that sort of thinking process. So to help you articulate your vision for your business. So when we were in the beginning stages of setting up our business, we first of all kind of got together, wrote an ethos or a manifesto document together. And in this, we covered what we wanted to offer as our services, as well as what our long-term goals and our values as a business would be. So we participated in a 2-day entrepreneurial workshop at the RMIT Activator, which we could do because Robyn was alumni. And they are sort of there as startup sort of help
boot camps.
Yeah. And it was very creative thinking and, not your traditional sort of business activity. There was lots of frenetic cutting and pasting and collaging and stuff. But I guess that was really good for us because it helped us identify what the problem that we were working to fix was and how our business could fill that gap. Now, the workshop was quite soon after we put together our ethos document, which, if I'm being honest, was a bit lofty. And it was quite a shock to come from the cozy bubble of the conservation world, where we were like, oh, we've got this niche thing, it'll be great. And then we were confronted with the realities of business planning with a room full of people who don't know what conservation is. So we left with a totally changed view of what it was that we wanted to do, and realized there was a lot of groundwork we could do before we could get to those sort of lofty ideals of, helping these people, or, working with this sort of community. So a positive of that workshop was making us take that big step backwards and sort of, seeing the forest for the trees, realizing that our business not only had to deal with how to perform conservation in a profitable way, but also we had the added challenge that conservation was not widely known as a service to the general public. So we naively thought that starting a business would be quite straightforward, but taking the wider view showed we really needed to work on advocacy for conservation in our sort of business practice. So that's sort of become an important part of our business as well.
So I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of business structure. So the way that your business is structured is important, as it influences the way you operate and also your liability. So common options are sole trader, which is like a freelancer, or if you subcontract to another employer. Partnerships, so basically that's like a sole trader, but there's two or more. So that's what we have. Yeah, two or more entities or people. Then there's a company, which is a kind of separate legal entity, and a trust, which I've never really understood, but it's complicated.
Sure, Gianna, we'll get into that.
So this table is kind of briefly kind of gives you an overview of the differences between all the business structures. And you can obviously go to business.gov.au or the AICCM website to kind of get more information. But essentially what you want to consider when choosing a business structure is what level of liability are you willing to be responsible for. So assess your personal risk. For example, if you have your own house or you have a large asset in your ownership, or are you working on $1 million artwork, then maybe set up a company so that your liability is limited. So if something goes wrong, they don't just take everything.
You're not personally
liable, or it's that your liability is capped rather than you have to take the whole liability. Then there's also, how do you want to manage and make decisions in your business? So do you want to make direct decisions? Then maybe you want to be a director in a company rather than a shareholder. Or, if there's one of you and you want to make direct, you want the business to be tied to you, then maybe you stay as a sole trader. So that this influences the way you the decision-making structures in your business. But also another thing to think about is how much startup finance you have. So companies and trusts cost more to run because you have to report more and you have more accounting obligations, like legally you have more obligations. So it's really important to think about your business structure because it contributes to how valuable your business is in the future, especially if you want to sell your business as an asset. For example, a company has perpetual succession, as in a company will continue to exist regardless of the changes in ownership, rather than sole traders and partnerships are really tied to the individual business owners, so they're tied to whoever owns it. So commonly, conservation practices kind of begin as sole practitioners or partnerships because you get simple, low-cost jobs. It's very simple to start up those kind of businesses. And then later on in the future, you might get more complicated jobs, or you might have more employees or that kind of thing. Then you might want to switch to a company structure and limit your liability.
Just a few obligations. We won't go through the tax ones because I'm sure Gianna will cover them, but a few of the obligations and regulations that it's really good to know about, and you really need to be operating within the framework of when running a business. Obviously, you need an ABN, either a sole trader if you're working alone, or a partnership ABN if you do have a partnership. So it's easy, it's free. Just have to sign up on the website. Same with the tax file number. I'd hope you all have one anyway. Business name registration. So there is a small fee attached to this, and it must be renewed every year, but you know, that gives you your trading name. OH&S, so you can find the relevant OH&S info for running your business at WorkSafe Victoria or your state or territory's equivalent, as they're all different. And so, you know, they have a lot of good checklists for figuring out, you know, what, like if you have chemicals on site, how you deal with them properly and in a safe way for yourself and anybody else using the space. If you're working on site, you might need a white card certification or working at heights license. They should, as the jobs, you know, present them, but just knowing what you may need is a good idea. And there's a few other things on there that, you know, I assume we'd all be working within, but Copyright Law, Privacy Act and the Spam Act and the Australian Consumer Law are good to know about as well. And then the AICCM Code of Practice. So obviously this is a voluntary industry code, but it does promote accountability and confidence with clients, and also ensures your business is aligned against others in the industry, which is really important. So there's a more complete checklist you can get through on the ABLIS website, which has a bit of a click through where you can sort of course there's no conservator button, but you know, you can sort of approximate as usual, and it will output all of the things that you need to be thinking about and looking at there.
And then in terms of risk and insurance, so insurance is an essential part of running a business. So if you're operating a conservation practice, you want to protect not just your property, but any damage or loss to objects resulting from your work as a conservator. So insurance protects your business, it minimises your exposure to risk, and ensures that you are able to compensate others if you are at fault. So it's advised you undertake a risk assessment of your business to determine what level of cover and how many kind of things you need to cover with insurance. And it's always better to eliminate any risks than to rely upon insurance to cover potential loss. So that's why it's great to do a risk assessment and just eliminate the risks so that you don't have stress. But as a minimum, conservators should hold insurance to cover any damage or loss resulting from your professional services and advice. So that is professional indemnity, that's what's that kind of insurance, and public liability is also really good to protect third parties from any kind of injury or damage. But basically, we would recommend never practicing without insurance, ever, without, you know, if you're a business or a subcontractor.
I mean, even if you're working on your kitchen table,
get insurance. So, you know, you are covered in terms of if you're an employee, then you're covered by your employer's insurance. But if you are a freelancer or you're working for someone else as a subcontractor, you need to cover yourself. So, and these types of insurance are different to, say, building and contents insurance, which protects an object when it's damaged by like fire, flood, you know, theft. You need additional insurance policies to cover this. So these insurances that we recommend as a minimum is about protecting any loss or damage due to your negligence, basically. And you know, you can do things in the best practice and try the best to avoid those risks, but that's what insurance is there for that rare occasion that something might happen. So, and there's also, additional insurance policies you might get for specific situations. So you might want to get specialty artwork insurance for, you know, high value artworks, or transit insurance for artworks that are then transported to and from your studio. And there's a lot of other ones that are on this slide. But the key thing is that to remember is that your liability can be waived in contracts to a limit. but you can't indemnify yourself from damage or loss resulting from negligence, like negligent practice as a conservator. So the key thing is to get insurance, and there's some really good providers. So NAVA is a really great provider. It's $300 a year. That's all you pay, and you get all those insurances, plus you get personal accident, and you're covered, plus you get discounts at galleries and lots of other things. Yeah, when they're open. But yes, so it's not a lot every year, $300, just to to make sure that you're covered, and that if you ever get a job working for someone as a subcontractor, you've got them ready. You can say yes to the job, and you're covered. You're straight away kind of can get working on site.
Cool. So we'll go into a bit of the planning. So yeah, a business plan is a very good way to sort of lay all of these things out in one document that articulates your goals. It can help you monitor your performance and lays out plans for marketing, finances, and your the operation of your business. So the way that we put our business plan together was participating in the NICE program, which it was the end of last year. So in completing the NICE program, we came out with a comprehensive business plan for our business. And as it says, if you did want to apply for any business loans, that's crucial. Any sort of external parties coming and looking at your business plan will always be your keystone document. So just a quick overview of the NICE program. It's a free cert in micro business operations, which is conducted at a TAFE. They offer them all around Australia. And you basically learn intensively about marketing, finances, and business operations. And these all contribute to the business plan. So that's essentially what makes it up. So at the end of the period, I can't remember how long it was, 2 months maybe, you're assessed on the viability of your business according to the business plan. If your business is deemed viable, you then run your business with a business mentor provided for 1 year. So that's a really good support network. If you, don't really have many people around you that you could turn to, if you're accepted into the NICE program, they will provide this contact with you who you can ask questions whenever. You have a quarterly check-in, and you sort of have to every quarter report on what's happened the past quarter. So it's a good way to sort of monitor where you're going and track where you're at as well. So a business plan usually will contain your business overview, which will focus on why your business is going to be successful. You get to sell yourself a little. So the nature of your business, your vision statement, your mission statement, and any business objectives. You'll get your marketing plan. So this is a bit of market research that you do as part of the course. It can help you assess your place within the broader conservation industry, gain a better understanding of your target markets, and inform the fees and services that your practice provides. So our marketing plan included marketing objectives, target market analysis, market research, which contained the results of surveys, interviews, situation analysis, competitive advantage analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, or SWOT analysis, marketing strategy, advertising, social media, a little bit of a plan there, and then customer service policies. Then there's the operational plan, which sets out how your practice will actually conduct its business. That may include an organizational structure, production process, so how you perform your work from first contact to actually completing the project, your legal and regulatory requirements, insurance, administrative forms, and resource planning. Then your financial plan, that is your comprehensive evaluation of your practice's current and future financial state. So including income, assets, liabilities, and your plan will include financial objectives, your startup costs and the finance required, outline your fee structure and your different services, a break-even analysis. So what is the point where your expenses or your overheads equal your revenue or your sales, and what do you need to charge to then break even at this point? A justification of your fees. Are they aligned with average fees in the conservation industry? Does it account for periods of low work? And this is where your market research really comes into being useful. Your sales and cash flow forecast, balance sheets, and profit and loss statements.
And then I guess when you're set up and you're running your business, what's really important is to continually monitor the financial and operational aspects. So, and this makes sure that you always have an accurate snapshot of how your business is performing and ways that processes can be improved. So important things to consider is, one, have accurate record keeping. So as a business owner, you have to keep business records for tax and other legal purposes. But on the other hand, good records of the finances also help you monitor the financial performance of your business as you go. So you can forecast things like, oh, there isn't a lot of work coming up. We need to hit the ground running with marketing so that a few months down the track, we can keep the cash flow coming through the business. So it's good to always keep the records accurate and up to date. And then another thing we want to stress is about fees. So quoting and setting fees is always difficult. So fees are influenced by a variety of factors and depend upon the particular needs of your practice and your target market. So this is where the business plan really comes into effect. So when you're determining fees, you need to kind of think about making sure you've covered your overheads. So we just need to remember that hourly fees that you charge as a business is different to the casual rate you'd have as an employee. So in your hourly fee, you need to cover your rent for your studio space, your materials, your yearly insurance. So, you might think, oh, I get paid $30 an hour at my casual job. I can charge $30 an hour in my own business. But you don't factor in the fact that you have to pay for all these other things. So you need to be mindful that you're covering all those things and that you're not paying for the right to work. You have to be compensated accordingly. Allow for a profit margin. So there are periods where you have low work that will cover that, but also you need to make a profit so you can reinvest into your business and buy things like equipment and resources and pay for the time that you spend that you can't charge the client for developing and improving your business. That takes time, and that's, you need to cover yourself for that. Also, what helps with fees is, having accurate time, indication of how much time and resources you need to complete jobs, and just be honest. Like that's where record keeping kind of helps, where you have a ongoing data about how long it takes to do a job, so that next time when you do a quote, it can be more and more accurate as each quote goes.
And it's very easy to want to downplay how long things will take because you are aware that people don't want to pay a lot for certain services, but that kind of ends up shooting yourself in the foot down the track.
Yeah, and it creates a kind of false narrative about how much time and attention and training it takes to be a conservator. So value your skills and value the work you provide for people. And also, make sure that your fees are aligned with the industry. So balancing what clients are willing to pay. So it can be difficult to talk to clients and really awkward about fees, especially if they want to pressure you into charging really low fees. So this is why advocacy is really important. So if your client doesn't know what conservation is and they don't know what prices to expect, and they can don't know what prices and they expect low fees, it can contribute to a wider expectation that our services are cheap. But you need to remember the amount of training and the skill and the professionalism required to be a conservator needs to be reflected in the fees that you charge. So, think about other industries that charge an hourly rate for their professional services, like consulting and architecture. We need to think about our time as valuable as that. And it's a specialist service that not a lot of people can do. So, but on the other hand, so fees should always be commensurate with the services provided. And then low fees can affect the running of your business. So when starting out, you may be really tempted to charge low fees to kind of win work. And if you haven't quoted appropriately, you may end up with not enough hours to do the treatment, but you have to finish the kind of job at your own expense. And then if you take that kind of idea to the extreme case, charging consistently low fees, you can result in bankruptcy, loss of reputation, low quality kind of treatment outcomes. And that's bad for yourself and everyone. So, and then more importantly, on a kind of less extreme case, it creates kind of an unrealistic expectation in the general public about fees, and that it puts you really under unnecessary financial and professional pressure. So, you want to stay in this profession, and you want it to be sustainable for you and for everyone. So just kind of think about, I guess, charging accordingly and reasonably. And I guess as a little tip, if you want to offer a discounted rate because you are working for friends or family, or like you're just starting out, or you just want to use it as a learning experience, then we want to kind of recommend that you make sure you accurately quote the job with the right amount of hours and apply
an appropriate fee.
And apply a discount on top of that. And share that kind of information with the client about how many hours you actually spend on a job, and so they can see you and appreciate the effort you put into the project, but also it kind of, as a marketing and a customer service thing, it provides an added kind of value to them, that they've gotten a deal of some sort.
But also it's fine if you want to charge somebody a low price, but showing them that, well, actually this is how much it would cost if I wasn't giving you a discount, but I'm going to apply this on this for this reason, but just so you know, this is how much services cost in the real world. Feeding back into that thing of setting up realistic expectations for what these services should cost.
And advocating generally for the conservation industry that we should be valued. And, there's a lot of training and work that goes into being a conservator. And finally, just to practice within your own expertise. So be aware of your limitations and accurately assess your own skill level. And it's not a problem that you don't know how to do something. Like, you are constantly learning, and that is the point. So try not to accept projects that you can't reasonably complete, or, it might even be better that you contract someone else, or you refer the job to other conservators who are more experienced if you don't feel like you're competent enough to finish it, and maybe it's a thing of like, I'm going to get this person to do this job, but can I sit with you and do it with you, and I can learn. So it's a learning process as well. And, don't be afraid to be upfront and honest with your clients about your limitations. Your client and the object will appreciate that you're honest, and that, about the results that you can realistically achieve. So I think clients appreciate that, and, it's not a shame to go, I know this person who is and would be so much better at this job. And then the client is so appreciative of going, oh, I didn't even know where to ask. Now you put me onto someone who could do a really great job. So, all that does is create positive kind of interactions. So, yes.
Yeah. We have some, this is just a bit of a summary of the resources we've listed throughout the slide. You can get a copy of this out to Lisa to distribute if people are interested. That's a lot of useful resources.
Anyway, that's us. And contact us if you need to. And I don't know how to. There you go.
Well, that's great.
Cool.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, I've already got a whole lot of questions for you both as well, which we'll ask towards the end. So if people are putting their questions in, we might be saving yours for the group chat at the end. But yeah, that was fantastic advice. Thank you so much, Elle and Robyn, for sharing your expertise. It's so very generous of you to have done all this hard work, setting up your own business, and then to share that with everybody else. So may I applaud you for that. So next I've got questions here for Gianna, who's going to answer all those burning questions that I have. And so given that I have a question, I'm just going to lead with it because I can't put it into the chat. So Gianna, as you know, I have an ABN as a graphic designer. A lot of conservators have past business lives.
Mm-hmm.
I want to run a conservation business. Can I run it off that?
Yes, you can. Off your one ABN, you can have a million businesses off that one ABN. The Australian business number is just like a tax file number. It's a unique identifier for that particular entity, whether it's you as an individual or as a sole trader or as a company or a partnership. But under that ABN, you can be a graphic designer, you can be a conservator, you can be a tree surgeon, you can be anything you want to be. What happens in the tax return, all those disparate sources of income, less all their relevant expenses, are all pulled together and it forms part of the taxable income.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's great. We have a question here from Cheryl Jackson. So if you are not registered for GST, if a small firm is not registered, assuming that you earn less than 75K,
yep.
You charge for GST on your invoice? And
no, you don't. So to charge GST, you must be registered in the GST system, which means even if you not going to make $75,000, a lot of people register for GST and charge GST on their fees for vanity reasons, for want of a better word. I want to show my customer I'm going to charge GST because they're going to know if I don't charge GST, I don't make more than $75,000. So there's some reasons some people actually do register when they don't need to. But if you're not registered for GST and you send an invoice to your client, you don't add GST to it. You say, my fee is $5,000, please pay. Thank you very much.
And is it true you have to have like something on your invoice that says that you're not registered for GST?
Just to make it clear, because, I mean, how many people actually go and look up on the ABN register, oh, this person is or isn't registered for GST? You have to be a total nerd if you're going to do it. Some people do, but if you put on the invoice, it's nice and clear on the invoice. It should make no difference to the customer. I hear some customers argue, oh, I'm going to impute that there's GST on it. No, I'm not registered. That's my fee. Please pay it.
Great. And a second part to that question is, if you have a contract with a government agency, do they have to pay GST to you? If you're registered for GST?
Again, it's all on the individual's business. If you don't need to be registered for GST, there's no point. If your turnover is less than 75,000, there's no legal obligation to be GST registered. You can, what I said before is you can voluntarily register, and then even if your turnover is less than $75,000, you've sent a bill, you've put GST on it, you're just another unpaid tax collector, and you don't really need to be so. But once you're over 75,000, you must register for GST. And that 75,000 is worked out on a rolling 12-month period. It's not strictly, the July to June financial year. It's like, oh, I started my freelance business in January. I'll keep looking every month. January, okay, I only make 10,000 that month. February, not so good. And you're trickling along, and you're just looking for the cumulative amount of revenue. Once you're sort of pushing, okay, I'm hitting 70, okay, now I've hit 75. Say we've hit 75,000 on the 1st of November. That's the point at which GST applies, and we charge GST on all our invoices from that point onwards. And we make sure we keep that little 10% of GST in a separate bank account if you're not very disciplined and you like to spend all your money, and you just keep it up your sleeve at the end of the year, because once we work out the GST and all your costs, you can subtract that from the GST you've collected, and then we send the government the difference.
Great. And following on from that, Eloise asks, should you register, do you think, if you might reach 75K? Like, what would be the period that you would have to register? Is it after you've earned the money or before? If you think
you can see it's going to happen. I think it's always good to do it, have your eye on it all the time. I think if you go a little bit over, I think it's not the end of the world, but ideally you've got your finger on the pulse and you're recording your revenue with all your free software like Wave or something, and that will tell you your turnover. We're looking at pure sales, not at profit. So it's just looking at what invoices have you sent out, what invoices have you been paid for, have we been paid for? Because I think the determination's on the cash basis. So whatever you've been paid, bang, I've hit 75. Okay.
Great.
So Sarah has asked she says she was told by a local government-run gallery that she couldn't write tax invoice on her invoice, just invoice. Is that correct?
Oh, that just sounds like someone who's really pedantic. Who cares? As long as, were they not registered for GST? Oh, look, if you want the gig, you just give them the invoice they want to see, as long as it's not illegal.
So there's no legality to having tax written on there or not having tax written on there?
You should have, I suppose you should have tax invoice written on it. But if you're not registered for GST, it's just an invoice, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I have another question here about super, like paying myself super. Oh, okay, so this is clearly my question. As a freelancer, I have to pay myself super, but I don't. So I try and remember to put money in to get the government co-contribution. I believe that has a cap.
Yeah, that's true. Look, I'll just start from the beginning. When you're a sole trader, you don't have to put super. It's not compulsory. If you don't want to pay yourself a little bit extra, you don't have to. Especially in the beginning when money's really tight, you might not want to do it. But if you do have employees or certain kinds of subcontractors whose relationship you have with them is almost a quasi-employer-employee relationship, then you must pay super. So it's obligatory for anyone in that sort of employer-employee kind of relationship, you must pay it. Or if you've got a company, that sort of entity, then you must pay yourself super and your employees super. But going back to what you said, as a sole trader, you don't need to pay super. If your income is very low, I think the threshold for the co-contribution, don't quote me, I didn't know I was going to get quizzed on this, is I think less than $32,000. So if your income's less than $32,000, we can look it up later. If you put your $1,000 into superannuation, once tax returns assessed, the government will actually put $500 into your super account. So that's what they call the co-contribution. Ordinarily, super is a tax expense for a sole trader. You can put up to $25,000 a year, and that $25,000 a year also includes if anyone else has paid you your super. So if you've been an employee and you're doing freelance as well, you can't exceed 25,000. So having said that, if you're earning more than 32,000 then and you want to put money into super, it'll be a tax expense, so it'll help to reduce your taxable income.
Great, thank you.
We've got a couple more here. There's an anonymous question here. It says, I have a client in New Zealand and this person's company is registered for GST in Australia, but the artwork is going to be taken back to New Zealand. Do they need to include GST in their invoice? So that was weirdly worded. I made a mess.
So is the conservators business registered for GST?
Yes, in Australia.
Was the work done here in Australia?
I believe so, by the sound of it.
Yeah, it's GST will apply because it's work done here. That's the nexus for GST if it's done in this country.
Great. Excellent. Bella asks, if you have an ABN and ambitions to work as a subcontractor, but are not actually working on it much, how much training or equipment can you reasonably claim as expenses?
How long's a piece of string? What will happen is if you spend too much in your business and you haven't got any revenue, you'll create a loss, and that loss will be deferred until you do make income from that business. So art conserving, oh my God, what is the official title? Conserving?
Yeah.
Conservation. Oh my God, it's not even Friday night. What was I going to say? Even though you're conserving works of art, they probably don't even deem it to be an arts business. And there's separate tax rules for, have you got an arts business? If you do, you actually can claim a loss from an arts business, but your other income's got to be less than $40,000. But I think what you do as conservators is probably, I don't know if you could call it artistic. Would you say it's artistic?
No, I'd say it's a business. Yeah, just a straight business.
It's just a more of a technical sort of skill,
Yeah,
restoring, because you're not like reinterpreting or reinventing. You're trying to get the original spirit of the artwork back out. To answer that that lady's question, I think you could buy all that stuff, but whether you could claim it in that particular year is the question.
So say somebody was working, I'm just going to say in a cafe, and then they might do one contract job and they've earned, let's be generous and say $1,000 off that, and then they buy $5,000 worth of equipment. Does that come only off that $1,000 that relates, or can it come off?
Yeah, I think that the difference will be deferred. You won't be able to claim the rest of it against your other income.
So it gets claimed against. So my graphics, for example, get claimed against whatever I earn as a graphic designer, and then my conservation would get claimed against.
Pretty much, I think so. If there are links, like if you can successfully argue there, like if you're an artist and an art conservator, maybe there's a bit of a crossover there. If you're both, an art, and then you'd have art materials, and, your incomes, that it's a related industry. It's not too disparate. So I suppose, you could use that to offset the profits from one or the other.
Oh, great. So working from home is something that a lot of people are doing now during COVID. Perhaps they work in a business and they're kicked out of their studio, or maybe they're only just starting a business working at home. I was just wondering if you could tell us a couple of things that could be tax deducted for people working at home, such as maybe room space if you're renting, or so sorry.
Look, if you own your home, like you've got a mortgage or you physically own the home, I usually tell people not to claim too much because you will affect the capital gains exemption on your home. You don't really want to pay tax on that profit when you eventually sell it. In that case, I would only ever claim maybe electricity and gas. And you can use the tax office method of 52 cents an hour. And you just got to have a pretty reasonable log of how you've worked out those hours. I don't know, if you keep a pen and paper or some sort of record. I usually do maybe, a 30 or 40 hour week from home. Then you could claim, 30 or 40 hours times 52 cents across the whole year, depending, if that's a good indicative usage. If you claim a bit of your internet, if you're using that, you've got to come up with a reasonable estimate of how much is used for business, mobile phone. If you're renting, then claiming a portion of your rent for a separate room used as a studio, that's a bit more clean cut because you do have a separate room and ideally nothing else happens in it except for business. If you've got a mixture of private use, then you're meant to apportion for that. So you can claim it. I usually, when people own their homes, I try to just limit it to electricity and gas.
Okay, that's great. Well, I think we'll, thank you so much, Gianna. I think we're just going to open it up to questions for everybody because we're getting a few mixed questions in now, if that's okay. We've got a question here about the NICE program for Elle and Robyn. Are there any special conditions for being accepted into the program that you know of?
I think
No.
so. But if I forgot to
Australian
mention,
citizen, maybe?
yeah, have a business idea.
Yeah.
But I did forget to mention that because it's run by the I forget what the government department is, something
Employment,
roads,
something.
small business, blah blah. So it's linked to Centrelink. So if you are receiving job seeker at the time that you do the course, once your contract is accepted, you will receive a NICE allowance for 9 months, which is the equivalent of the job seeker payment, but you can earn as much money through your business as you want. And you can earn up to a certain amount in other jobs as well, but they will cut you off if you earn too much.
And basically you get a job seeker allowance without having to look for jobs like a job seeker, because you're working full-time on your business.
You're not actually getting it through the Department of Human Services anymore. They switch you over to this other department. But I don't think you need to do anything special to sign up. If you just search NICE, it should kind of link you to all of the providers in your area. So in Melbourne, I remember when I looked, we did ours at the CAE, or the old CAE in
Fox Hill Institute.
Yeah, and there's one in Collingwood and Holmes Glen as well.
Yeah. So yeah, they're all free of charge. You basically just have to be, I think, an Australian citizen, really.
It is a bit of a time commitment.
Yes.
It's like 2 months, 3 days a week, 9 to 5.
You're in classrooms,
Yeah.
getting
to school.
lectures, and you have to work on your business plan. Like you have homework, and that all builds up to contributing to your business plan. So it's not a quick course. It's a lot of...
I mean, in the scheme of things, it's pretty quick. And you do come out of it with the Cert 4.
Yes.
I would really recommend it if you have the time and you do want to, do a bit of a crash course in business, because, like the marketing and financial things were new information to me.
And it's very structured learning. So it's, especially if it's very hard kind of information and very, it's hard to kind of deal with by yourself. So it's nice to get to be in classes and it to be kind of structured and delivered, and you get, practice exercises, and you have a teacher that you can ask all the really stupid questions about. So I would really recommend doing it.
Guys, Daniel has asked whether the AICCM or another institution has recommended fees for freelance conservators.
So legally they can't, because it's against consumer competition laws, I guess. You can't, because that's basically price fixing. So an organisation, like an institute, can't set a price structure because then that defeats market competition. So they can't legally they can't set any price structures.
Yeah. I mean, part of our business plan in doing market research and competitive analysis thing was doing that research and sort of doing a bit of it. I mean, it's kind of hard in some cases to find out what people charge, which is fine, if they don't want to share what they're charging. But I think it's anywhere from $100 an hour to $350 an hour, depending on who your client is and what the job is. I think anything below that.
Yeah, and it really depends on your individual circumstances and your break even and your financial plan. So,
I mean, I know NAVA have an artist fee structure, which we have used before to set prices for workshops and stuff. So that could be useful to look at.
as a comparison.
I think you might have to be a member to access that info. But if you sign up for their insurance, you're signing up for their membership, so you get access to all of their sort of advocacy and advice for artists and arts practitioners. And they have a conservator box.
Yes. And but fees are also one of those things that is just really hard to pin down. So, it helps. We've worked in private practice in for other companies, so we know
Yeah, we have
from
some
previous experience about pricing structures that other people charge in other organisations. So, and you know, we have experience quoting on things for those companies. So, you know, we've built on one, working in the industry and our own experience, doing market research and asking other people, but also assessing our own individual, like our unique situation here. So, and then you kind of do the matrix and balance it all and come out with a fee. And then, you know, at the beginning we were charging a certain amount and then we kept not getting jobs at that rate. And then we realized, oh, we might need to like lower the rate a bit. So, you know, it's a little bit of trial and error as well. So,
and I mean, I think, as we said, fees is always a difficult area. And if you can maintain like and it's hard to do a lot of the time, but if you can maintain like a kind of open and honest dialogue with your client about what they're expecting for the outcomes that they want, you know, if they have a budget, it's very hard to get people to name a budget sometimes, but, you know, it's like we want to work within your budget and give you some sort of service, even if you can't pay for the full treatment. So, you know, sort of having, like making it not a scary topic, I think, and trying to just like get everything out on the table and say, you know, this is how much I usually charge an hour, but, you know, for XYZ, I could give you a discount or whatever, you know, like, I think, yeah, it's difficult though to
and you never get it right. And it's always like one job you might make a profit and one job you make a loss. And then it kind of like it's a balancing act. So, and like with conservation, like there's a lot of latent inherent issues in painting, like in objects. So you don't know, you might go, oh, it might just need a dry clean and a wet clean and then a varnish removal or something. And then you, as soon as you unpack it, then it gets more and more complicated. Oh, there's a crack. Oh, there's a hole. There's a, you know, and you haven't quoted for that. And so, you know, part of that is one, assessing if you want to go back to the client and renegotiate and go, oh, all this stuff's kind of happened and we didn't know about this stuff. Do you mind if we, you know, pay for, you know, if you pay for a few more extra hours and we can fix it to this? Or, you know, like, so it's about being honest and negotiating with your client. Or, you know, maybe it's a client that you really want to, I don't know, impress or, I don't know, keep as an ongoing client. Then you go, okay,
I'll just take the hit for this one. And
but just know that I'm giving you some extra work here, so you better remember.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, that's like the bottom line. If you make sure that your client is aware of the actual value of the work that you've given, regardless of what you're charging them, just making sure that they're really aware of the value of your work.
Yeah, good points. Especially with conservation and things having to be renegotiated because the objects change over time and the things that you don't realise that you're going to happen upon. Well, that does scare me, having to renegotiate. But anyway, moving on. So Joshua asks, what was your impetus, Belle and Elle, for starting your own business as opposed to working within an institutional setting? And I suppose that's really relevant to Gianna as well, because you've started your own business too.
We can talk about this for a long time. We'll be brief, but I guess we had both been working for a few years in the industry, doing internships and contracts and, you know, working interstate, and both decided we wanted to be in Melbourne for, you know, personal life reasons, and there are no jobs in Melbourne. So it was a bit of a forced hand, but I mean, it is what it is.
It is what it is. But, you know, it's, I think
as well, you know, having networks here sort of was.
Yeah, so we kind of, I guess, the opportunities in institutional settings were probably less for us without having to move interstate and up through our lives. But also, you know, we wanted to also keep skills and learning about treatment. And in institutions, you maybe focus a lot more on preventive and maybe more collections, care and management. And with private practice, you were thrown in the deep end with treatment. So maybe, you know, that was kind of what excites us. And we kind of saw a gap in the market as well. So like our business model is a little bit kind of more people-centered. So we do a lot of outreach to like institutions and artists. So we do a lot of artist interviews, we do workshops, you know, it's more that advocacy side of things. And, you know, we saw a gap with, I guess, maybe a focus on modern and contemporary art, and also kind of a business model that was kind of a bit leaner in structure. So more of a collective rather than a hierarchical or larger firm or company with, you know, departments and lots of employees. We're kind of a bit more agile.
And I will say that we were very lucky in that about the same time that we were thinking about starting a business, from the same year level that we had studied with in Melbourne, we had a friend who was running a conservation adjacent building, who had a studio that we could sort of slowly start to base ourselves out of. And then another friend who did the NICE program at the same time, who does objects conservation. So we were really lucky in being able to sort of pool resources and sort of operate in a bit of a loose collective. So if we ever needed jobs where we needed more people, you know, we're sort of there for each other, which has worked really well.
And we've been able to kind of like tender for jobs as a collective. So then, you know, just kind of having numbers and, you know, that kind of clout to be able to kind of get those kind of jobs, but then also unpack and be singular entities as well. So we can kind of, you know, like a transformer, like go together and be a big group, or like kind of drift off and do, so we kind of do our own things as well.
And I think, like, you know, with all of those various aspects, it's, you know, you're never going to be just doing treatments all day. You know, there's a lot of different areas that I think conservation can and should be moving into to, you know, sort of hold space, basically. So, yeah.
And Gianna, you started your own business as well?
Oh, God, 1,000 years ago. Yeah. How many recessions ago? God, 4 recessions ago, maybe. And it's, you know, it's very rewarding. It's very frightening. And I think Robyn hit on a really important question, is the fees and discussing with the clients. That is the most difficult thing, isn't it? And luckily with accountants, you know, there's so many of us, you know, you can sort of see a broad range of fees, but in a specialised business like you too, it'd be pretty hard to sort of say what is an average hourly rate required. Every work of art that you're fixing is, like you said, you might look at it at first glance, it might be maybe a 3-hour job, and then it turns out, there's actually another 5 or 6 hours. Sorry, can I re-quote you? When you were saying that, I was thinking, when you're quoting, can you give like sort of a ballpark, sort of a contingency? If we find additional areas to address, can we contact you and discuss? I mean, is that something that you could say with your clients? Would they be open to that? I mean, if they love that work of art, they want to get all the TLC you can give it. So,
well, I think it's just useful in all your quotes to always, like, so we always add a contingency, and that depends on people's, you know, how comfortable they are and like how much of a percentage of they want to charge as the contingency. So I think, you know, it can range from like 10% to like 15%.
Or just an hour extra, you know, to sort of give yourself some cover. You usually will use it, and if you don't, you know, you can always give it back to them.
Because and that prevents you from having to like go back and negotiate. You just have that added contingency in your fee.
But also, you know, we recently have sort of started just like looking into other sort of fee structures. So we have a piece that is going to need so much work, and like it's actually behind you here. And if you look on our Instagram, I've put some close-ups of all the myriad of problems it has. So, and this is a client we've worked with on quite a few projects now. And so, you know, we have that dialogue and, you know, she knows what sort of work that we can provide for her. But because it is an unknown quantity, how many hours it's going to take, and also she's a good client that has used us a number of times, we have sort of set up a retainer with her where we've said, pay us this amount every month and we're going to work a minimum this many hours, which is, you know, you're going to get really good value for money because we're going to be putting more time into this than
but yeah,
we did if we were doing an hourly.
But use it as a learning experience, but also as a long burn project that we can fill slow periods with. So the expectation is you're getting kind of a discount. You are, the client is getting, there's a regular small payment, so it's easier and palatable than a big lump sum. And then also it means we can take our time with it. There's no stress about a deadline.
Yeah, and I think with these really big projects, it's like we're going to try to do like 1 or 2 month check-ins and be like, this is where we're at. This is taking longer than we expected, or this has gone really quickly. And, you know, you can sort of like have that ongoing dialogue with being like, okay, well, we've taken it to this point. We're only 5 months into the year that we said this was going to take. Do you want to stop now? You know, like, and there's that kind of like ability for the client to say, I'm happy, I want to stop now, but they've already, I guess, sort of mentally prepared for that new process. So,
we're trialing a lot of different things at the moment, which is the whole point of the first year of your business. You just, you know, you do a lot of different things and see what works.
And I bet no two pieces of art are the same, and you can't say, oh, I've seen that again. I know how long that's going to take to do. No such luck. It's all.
No.
That's just experience, though. Once you do it a few times, it's like, oh, that's a 10-hour job or 300-hour job. I don't want that one. You can have that one.
We actually have something sitting behind the computer that we do not want to. We're going to try palm that off on someone else.
On that note, and you've kind of touched on it already, but do you think it would be more difficult to run a business by yourself? How has the partnership with other conservators been advantageous in your case? And Charlie said, I don't see other conservators I might be able to partner with, and I'm a bit apprehensive of opening a business by myself. I know you guys already touched on it, but if there's anything else you wanted to add, maybe.
There's pros and cons to both. So if you have more people, it means you have to bring in more work to pay for more people. So the stress to bring in the cash flow is higher when you have to pay wages for more people. But the thing is, when you have more people, you can split the tasks up. So in terms of our business, we have a structure. We have a business, like a business structure, basically where it's like Elle's mainly client-facing and I'm mainly operations and admin. So then, and we kind of acknowledging our strengths. You know, I'm detail-orientated, you're people-orientated, and that, you know, so she deals with social media. I cannot be bothered. She does with finances. I couldn't even imagine. Yeah, I love her Excel spreadsheet. She can't deal with it. So, you know.
So that's definitely a pro. But I mean, the other people in our studio do run their businesses by themselves. And, you know, I think, again, it's just like, the scope of what you might be able to do is a bit less to begin with. But I mean, having that recognition of, you know, and what we laid out today is like, that's like, you're taking it to the maximum. That's like, you're doing all of these things. But if you do the NICE program, or, you know, you sort of look through some of the documents online, they, you know, they set out easy steps for you to work within your means. So you don't, you know, necessarily need to be trying to reinvent the wheel. But I mean, it is really great, I guess, even if you don't know people around you that you would necessarily want to go into business with, just having friends to be a sounding board for treatments or fees, or, I mean, just being like,
Just go, how do I deal with this?
yeah, is
pesky
this client being unreasonable? Am I
Yeah.
crazy?
Yeah.
You know, just, and I mean, that doesn't have to be conservation related people in your life either. That can be anybody around you, but it is useful, I guess, having people in a similar industry that you can sort of get it a bit in terms of bouncing ideas around. But yeah.
Great. And that's where AICCM comes in. If you want to go onto the Emerging Conservators Facebook group, you can connect with people through that as well, or events if you contact the local people. And if you're not part of the AICCM, our Facebook group's open for you as well, and there's quite a lot online, like a lot of open cultural freelance Facebook groups that you can become part of and ask these questions to, whether they're treatment questions or business questions, anything really. So I have a question for Gianna. It's one accountant told me I had to keep a month's log for my mobile phone. Is that so?
You've got to be able to prove it. So it's boring, but it's good to have something that you can rely on and show the tax man if they wanted to audit you, some sort of record.
So is it that if you keep it for a month, you extrapolate that out?
Yeah, it's a typical full week, some on the phone all the time. But it's so hard now because everyone uses their phone, the internet. It's not like the old days where we just use it to ring up people, and it was pretty easy to go through all your phone bill and say, oh, I rang my mum or my sister and the rest were business. I mean, God, I don't know. It annoys me, that sort of thing, that sort of level of proof that you have to do, but you've got to do it somehow.
Great.
Another one for Elle and Robyn. Due to the difficult COVID times, job opportunities are low. Is it crazy to start a freelancing sole trading conservation business from your home? Or would I have to start in a space already designed to cater for this kind of work? What tips would you have?
The working from your home, I mean, is obviously, it's possible, depending on, you know, if it's a small job. Again, you want to make
Depends
sure,
what the job is.
yeah, you have like a safe and secure place that you can actually work on it. I mean, I've worked on things on my lounge room floor before.
Obviously not without insurance.
Always insurance. And if you're working from home, probably make sure you have home and contents insurance as well, just to be doubly safe. I mean, yeah, I guess the looking for a studio space that caters to conservation is difficult. Watch this space though.
Yes.
I couldn't give anything away.
It's my dream. It's my dream that someone starts a co-working space for conservators.
Oh,
keep
your
your eyes
wish
out
may
for
come
2021.
true. Just watch the space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're working on something with our collective that will hopefully provide a few opportunities to be that space if you're Melbourne based.
Yes.
Little job.
Yeah. But, you know, I guess the thing is it's possible, but yeah, like just assess your risk.
And I mean, I suppose as well, in terms, like, you know, we have got to this point where we've started a business, but like for many years, I would have a few little jobs here and there. And I, you know, often would find a friend who had a studio that's maybe an art studio, or, you know, a clean art studio, or a similar business that I would say, can I just come in and use your bench space for a week and I'll pay you whatever you want in rent for this sort of period that the job's going to last. But I'm not going to, you know, necessarily be and obviously I was very lucky to have those people around, but you know, I guess in finding those opportunities, if you have anybody that you might be able to hit up for a bit of studio space is good. But
it's up to individuals how they want to work as well, I guess.
I mean, everybody's working from home right now. So
yeah.
I'm not conservators.
But yeah, sometimes you just don't want to have your work where you live as well.
I mean, if you're using chemicals or anything, you need to be really careful about handling them safely as well.
And ventilation and all that stuff.
And also pets. I know a lot of people have interesting like nets over their doors that they hook up so that their pets can't come in and shed hair on the work while it's, you know, being varnished or something.
Yeah.
knock something over.
Cat hair in the varnish. I have actually seen that before.
Yeah.
A question for Gianna. Somebody who is living rent-free, are they still able to claim the 52 cents per hour for electricity and gas?
I don't know. I don't think so. Are they contributing to the bills?
I'm going to say yes.
Well, if they are, if they're paying mum and dad or whoever for electricity, then probably yeah. But if they're not, then you're pushing it, aren't you? That's a bit cheeky.
It's interesting if you're renting and those utility bills are in somebody else's name.
Oh, that's different because you're probably sharing in that. You're probably contributing to paying for it. Doesn't matter that your name's not on the bill.
Okay.
I think if you're getting it free, then that's naughty. I don't think you can claim it. But if you're contributing to, I don't know, the kitty, here's $100 for the light and power, then I think you could.
Great.
And again, you've got to have a pretty good record of how many hours you're spending at home in your little diary.
Paris has asked, what is the correct way of conducting market research on fee structure if you're working outside of Australia?
There's a correct way, but in terms of, I mean, you have to ask people, I think. Yeah. I mean, that's how we sort of went about our market research in Australia, and I'm not sure if there are industry standards or something overseas available, but I guess experience from either working in other private conservation businesses or
ask your friends who work in places. They might be able to tell you off the record. I think it's just talking to people.
Yeah. Or I don't know, if you're offering other services that are covered by other places like framers, you could just do a fake inquiry. I don't know, that's probably bad to say, but how else do you figure out what prices?
And part of our market research was also quoting for jobs and not getting them.
Yeah, exactly.
And going and then assessing why we didn't get them and go, did we charge too much per hour? Did we allow for too much time? Like, what were the factors?
Yeah.
And then a lot of that's like trialing and error. So you go, I've quoted for this. The client goes, I can only afford this, or I think it's only worth this.
Or they just say, I've gone with someone else, and you say, do you want to tell us why? And you just never hear from them, which happens.
But, you can always just ask the question, and people say, I don't want to tell you that, and you go, thank you. There's no harm in asking. So, yeah.
Hi, Robyn and Elle. This is from Madeline. I have a question about access to materials. What sort of licenses do you need to purchase laboratory grade chemicals and solvents? And are there different licenses required based on your business structure, like if you're a sole trader or a company?
This question was actually somewhat answered in a previous statement by David.
I missed that.
Chemicals down there. And yeah, he correctly points out that some of them are really difficult to get, including ethanol. You do need a license. He's very kindly offered to help out legitimate conservators because he does have a account with Sigma Aldrich, which is very hard to come by. David's in Tassie, so I'm sure if you do need something that is very hard to get in touch with him. But I guess in terms of
like other chemicals, we just buy them retail.
Yeah, so there's a lot of science suppliers,
yes,
and like reagent sort of grade things, which.
So if you go to suppliers who kind of supply chemicals to like schools and stuff, and you can buy small quantities. So you can buy like, it doesn't have to be a drum. It could be like 500 mils or something. But, you can just look up. I think the one we use sometimes is like Pacific Labs or something.
We have found a few, and we found one that we got some chemicals for making pH adjusted waters from Sydney recently, who were actually really good, and because we were concerned about having quite high percentages of acetic acid and stuff, and just for handling a bit uncomfortable, but they were really good and were able to offer us like diluted solutions, which are a bit safer obviously to handle.
because at the moment our studio is kind of like a art studio, so we don't really have a special chemicals cupboard, so we don't really want to
we
keep
don't want to have anything
like
on site
glacial acetic acid, that, you know, and really corrosive stuff on site, just for our safety.
in terms of figuring out what licenses you might need, that ABLIS survey does have a section about, you know, if you're working with chemicals, it can point you in the direction of where you can get specific licenses, or, you know, just what your requirements under the law are in having these chemicals on site as well.
But yeah, the biggest thing is ethanol. You can't get ethanol without a license. So.
Great. Well, we've got lots of questions coming in, and not as much time as we would like to answer them all. So we'll see how quickly we can get through and how many we can answer. Robyn and Elle, do you make clients sign a contract acknowledging risks?
Yes, very
So,
long contract.
Yeah, so we have a quote, and then it has terms and conditions attached to it, and then they sign that, and then we file that.
Yeah.
And
So if they're signing that, they're accepting our terms and conditions, and if they haven't read them, like any product, that's on them.
Yeah, and and we make sure that they state their value of their artwork, so we can assess how much value artwork we have on site, so that we make sure that we're covered, and yeah, basically that they're aware that they're responsible for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a question earlier also about travel, like as a freelancer, like do you build travel in to your client, to your costings?
It's up to people and how they want to charge. We don't charge.
We've charged for like call out visits, like somebody wanted us to come to their house and assess an artwork, and so we charged a nominal fee that if they accepted the job would be, you know, incorporated into the work. Yeah. But otherwise, if they didn't go ahead with the quote, then they had to pay that fee, that call out fee. So I guess it's an incentive to then go ahead with the treatment. And it's also, they don't waste your time, because a lot of people shop around and get quotes and then you don't hear back from them. Yeah. And they use your quotes to as kind of their own market research to then negotiate costs with other suppliers. So you want to protect yourself and your time. Yeah. But that could be a question for Gianna as well, whether travel to job sites can be claimed.
Yeah, if you're travelling from your studio to the client, yeah, that's definitely an allowable leg.
Yeah, so actually we did charge some petrol going out to regional Victoria,
yeah,
to do a quote. So
that's good. Good on you. Get as much as you can. That's excellent.
You can't charge public transport to go to your work, can you?
No, going to and from home to work, you can't claim it unless you've got another studio set up at home and you're working there, and then you jump in the car and then you go to your other studio. So, because they deem that legs of the journey are private in use, home to work, work to home, unless you're carrying heavy tools and equipment, or you've already started work at home and then you continue working, then that trip is allowable. And you can just record the kilometres in your car with heaps of kilometre apps out there. Or with public transport, I think it's really hard. Public transport will only ever be once you're at the studio and then you go and do a trip to a client on the tram or on the train. Only that part of the journey you'd be able to claim.
We have looked into in the past, like car share businesses. If you don't have access to a car, and you can get business accounts that, you know, I guess that's all you're using it for. So yeah.
I mean, if you're just going to use the car to go and do the client visit and it's not used for private use, then you could claim all of that. Why not?
Great.
Yeah.
On that note, we've got another question which Ricardo touched on. Do you have any suggestions for how to absorb the cost of treatment, research, admin, quoting and site visits?
Where your hourly rate kind of factors that in.
Yeah, which is why it should be quite high.
Yes, because and you have to, and that's where your break-even analysis kind of comes into play. So you need to be very, reasonable. Allow yourself enough hours in the day to do non-billable hours, because that's admin, that's marketing, that's accounting, that's, you know.
And I mean, you can charge slightly less for, you know, certain, like this is all back of house sort of, you know, bit of a matrix to figure out how much you're going to charge the client in total. But, you know, so your general treatment proposal where you say, I'll do 8 hours cleaning and blah, blah, blah. You know, you can charge less for, I guess, the less skilled aspects of the job if you want, like report writing or photography or something to sort of like meet people's budgets, I guess.
Bring him in. He's got his outfit on. I want to show him.
In terms of, that whole side of things, it's difficult. Sometimes you just have to absorb a bit of your research costs maybe, but I think, like Robyn said, getting a hourly fee rate that attempts to cover some of those aspects.
And research and stuff is value adding to business. So you're increasing your skills and allowing yourself to be able to offer more services. So sometimes it's like, you know, it's investing into your own business. Oh, cute.
Cute jumper.
He's been on a walk, Okay.
Oh,
Leave it to install.
no. What's the name of your whippet, Gianna? Oh, Pip. We've got a question for both of you. If Deborah asks if I set up a studio in my home and all the stuff needed for it, such as new door locks, air conditioner, separate air conditioner installation, which you sometimes use, Gianna, because trying to keep things at a certain temperature or RH, would these be considered legitimate business expenses?
Yes. Again, it all comes back to the house, and if you own your home and you're running a business from home, it affects your capital gains exemption when you sell it eventually. So yes, you could elect to try to claim those items, but I'd be wary not to do it because like when you sell your home, normally you don't pay any tax on the profit. You know, say you buy a house for $500,000, you sell it for say 800 grand. On that profit of 300,000, you don't pay any tax. But if you say a quarter of my house is used as a studio and I'm working from it, then you could expose that profit to having to pay tax on a part of it. So you can set up a studio, you can put in air conditioning, you can claim it. But beware down the track that you might have to pay capital gains, which might be much more than what you've saved in tax along the way. So that's I mean, I know everyone wants to work from home, but that's the downside of doing so. Because fortunately, properties appreciate so much, you could have an unintended consequence of having to pay tax on an otherwise tax-free profit.
Interesting.
I mean, if you think your house is never going to go up in value and it's going to flatline, then you do it. But if it's going to go from here to there, then you wouldn't.
That's a great idea because, it is very tempting to set up the studio at home, but then knowing that...
Like minor things like furniture, you could claim the air conditioner, you know, if it's something that you could remove. Like what the ATO doesn't like is sort of capital fixed, like if you bought an air conditioner for the whole house, then I think it'll be a bit hard to try to argue that there's a portion which is used. I'd sort of like to steer people away from that only because of the capital gains thing is just so terrible. You might end up paying more tax than you've ever saved by claiming it. Sorry, I must let him out.
That's okay. We've got 3 more questions and then we'll probably call it a night. But Annabelle?
Yeah, 2 are kind of similar, so I might throw them in together. As a new business, how do you make sure you get enough clients? Did you make sure you had enough contacts before you started the business, or was it in your advertising that you were relying on to draw clients? And then Dan has asked, have you come across clients who are not comfortable with working with a new business? If so, how have you managed that hurdle?
So to get enough clients is constantly networking. It's hard. It's hard. It's a lot of work. So you have to market yourself, you have to have, and see and it's hard with COVID and being at home, but,
A large part of our networking strategy was gallery openings, but that's been off the table this year.
Yeah.
But I mean, not really, I guess. We didn't come into this thing like, well, I have 12 jobs lined up already. But I do think once you start telling people around you that you're doing it, especially if you have networks where you're working, if you've grown up there or studied there or what have you, or engaged in different communities, as soon as people sort of hear what you do, all these things come out of the woodwork, and they say, oh, I just got this in the back of the cupboard and maybe you could work on that. And so, I mean, we've had a lot of jobs sort of present themselves that way, I suppose. And also
like word of mouth, really, because it's the thing with conservation, it's about trust, and it's a very, people are trusting their really valued items to you. So people often come to us because they've been recommended, like we've been recommended to them, and then that actually is a really good way to get jobs, rather than, it's hard to kind of just sell yourself because who are you from Baraso? But like when you get a recommendation from someone you trust, then you're like, oh, I would like to work with those people. So it's just having conversations with people, and you never know what situation, wherever you are in, at a friend's barbecue, at a
you never know who's going to have a job for you.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one thing.
But I don't think we've encountered anybody who's uncomfortable with the business.
No, because I think we've been honest about where our experience level, and no one questions our experience, and if they ask us, then we go, this is what we've done before, and they can take it or leave it. But I don't really, I think,
to be honest, the most amount of people that haven't followed through on jobs is probably price.
Yes,
that's
it's
the
not
major
about
determinant, really.
Yeah. And I think, you want to work with people that respect your expertise. So if they're questioning that, then I don't really want to work with people who don't respect your professional opinion. So you've trained and you're an intelligent person, so they should respect that. So I think if they have a problem with it, then maybe they need to find someone else. And then they can pay them a lot more money. Don't take that personally.
It's an interesting one with the expertise. I know it was something that was raised at the national conference about people starting businesses when they've had just a couple of years out of conservation, but I feel like you guys have really nailed it. It's so clear on your website that you're taking jobs on to your level of expertise, and the amount of expertise that you have from the variety of jobs that you've done just straight out of university, and the expertise you bring in, like you say, Robyn, say from architecture, from pre-university, because many of us have jobs prior to doing the masters. I think it really shows that it can be done, and that it can be done in a very ethical way.
Yes.
And that a lot of those fears perhaps are unfounded, that you can't start a business with just some experience.
Totally. And I guess, sorry, this is not so much on that point, but back on clients and getting clients, as David just mentioned, publishing papers is a good way to attract clients, and any sort of media. And I suppose something else that we have thought about is trying to get your name out there, not so much through paid advertising, but through working with different art galleries, or engaging with different communities that might be interested in conservation, and you're getting your name out there. So if anybody has something they need conserved, maybe they'll think of you because they've seen you do X, Y, or Z.
And volunteering is a really good way as well. So if you volunteer for a gallery, or you meet a lot of people, and then they go, oh, you're into conservation, or you're a conservator, I've got this thing, or maybe you can help out with advising us on collections, and then your volunteer work turns into a paid job. So it's just kind of being engaged, and you know.
Yeah, exactly. And engaging with the communities that you want to operate within, I suppose.
Great. And Sarah has a question, and it's a question I was wondering as well, about if you had a lawyer write your terms and conditions. I was wondering that about your business plans as well. Do you get lawyers to check those?
It's up to people, but like, you know, there are guides online about writing a contract. Yeah. So, and a contract law is very simple. It's like there are certain things that you know, to create a contract, you have to put things in writing and certain terms, and, you know, consumer law prevents you from putting unreasonable terms, but they're like, you know, but there are standard contracts online. I think there's the Department of Treasury, I think, has a guide to writing contracts. So, you know, and even just like an email, you know, a verbal thing, that's a contract. So a contract is just an agreement. And so in terms of our terms and conditions, we just did our risk assessment and thought about the things that we wanted to take on as a risk and what we wanted to waiver. And so put those things that you don't want to be responsible for, and that obviously within reason and within contract law, you know, put them into your terms and conditions of what you want the client to be responsible for and not yourself. But we would advise, you know, if you're not comfortable with doing that yourself, is to engage a lawyer.
Yeah, or, you know, get a lawyer to look over it once you've written something up.
Yeah.
I mean, we also, for our partnership agreement, found like a law online thing, which will give you the template of your partnership agreement, and you can add and subtract things as are relevant to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some free things out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources. Yeah.
All right, we've got a couple more. One more question for Gianna. Would you only pay capital gains on the portion of your property that you use for the business?
That's right. Yeah, that's true. And that's also apportioned how many years that you are running the business as well. So it might be, I've had that house for 20 years. I only ran my business for 3 years and I only used a quarter of the house. So in the end, it might not be that much of a tax that you end up having to pay. But I always like to make people aware that there is a consequence.
Especially, as you say, if your property goes up and then that cost goes up beyond.
Yeah. If the property value doesn't go up by much, it doesn't matter really. But if it goes up, like, you know, prices have gone really crazy the last few years, like, you don't want to be paying tax for no reason at all.
That's true. Well, thank you all so much for coming on and talking about conservation business and what it's given us a lot to think about in how we go forward, and also answered some great questions for me about ABNs especially. Thanks, Gianna, because I really needed to know that. Because it is confusing. There is so much information online. Sometimes it's really hard to get to target. You know, you have to spend a lot of time researching. As Elle and Robyn, I'm sure you did a lot of, as you say, a lot of research, a lot of prep, and talked about starting a business for quite a long time. So congratulations on getting it up and running. It's fantastic, and I hope you're really proud of your achievements there. I certainly am, even though it's got nothing to do with me, but I just think it's fantastic. It's just great to see people having a go and being successful at it, and it's very inspiring.
Thank you.
So we'll send out some links that from your presentation as well to everyone who signed on. And once again, if you join me in thanking our panel of experts, as I can see in the chat, I'm going to do a little clap here. And thank you for joining us. This will be on the AICCM website in about a week to 2 weeks. If you'd like to watch over it again, we'll see some of our previous webinars. And we have some more exciting ones coming up towards the end of the year as well. And we'll let you know about those in the not too distant future. And I'll be keeping my eyes peeled on that co-working space. So I can't guarantee I'm going to tell anyone else about it because I want to get in first. But anyway, thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good luck to everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.